Welcome back, my lovely listeners. I hope you are all having a fantastic day and staying safe out there. Today's video is a collection video, and it is a collection of 5 UFO encounters. UFO encounters are stories where people find some sort of unidentified flying object. These are true stories people post to Reddit for others. And honestly, they're just interesting stories. UFOs are always an interesting topic to talk about. So you have the believers, you have the skeptics, and you have the people that are in between. Really, there's a number of sides you can take on this, huh? If you enjoy the video, please do hit the thumbs up button, and also please remember to subscribe to the channel for more content like this. But with that said, I will say I hope that you can simply enjoy. When I was in the 4th or 3rd grade, I saw a UFO with my older cousin and little brother. This was in Voorhees, New Jersey, during our summer vacation. We were in a high-end apartment complex and had gone outside to play. This was in the late 90s. We had decided to first see who was out before deciding on what toys to bring out to play with. Think water guns, bikes, scooters, Pokemon cards, etc. We were going to the park first, but heard a strange, high-pitched whistling noise down the hill from our apartment building near the mailboxes. It was the kind of whistling noise that brought about a strange energy. I noticed everything seemed really quiet except for this whistling. I say whistling, but that's the closest sound we have in this world that people would collectively be able to picture. It wasn't exactly whistling. It did give me the creeps. I wasn't scared, I just felt uneasy. My older cousin decided to go and check it out. He ran down the hill, and I saw him turn his head left and stop dead in his tracks. I saw his jaw and his eyes go so big, and him tell us, "Oh my god, come look it's a UFO." My brother and I were both younger and wary of him, since he was a known prankster and a mischievous boy. We didn't want to come, but he said you will regret not looking in such a way that I ran down the hill to go look as well. There was an apartment building blocking the view of the UFO, and so I walked slowly to where I would pass it and be standing by my cousin. As I neared the location, the whistling became louder. I started to see the UFO floating, hovering right next to the balcony of a family we knew because they had older kids who would play with us sometimes. The UFO was about the size of a large pickup truck, and it was giant and metallic, but not a metallic ball. It was spinning really fast and looked as if it should have been able to reflect its surroundings because it was so shiny and metallic, but it didn't. The whistling was this ball spinning so fast yet so slowly as well. It had that saucer thing around it, but not like huge or anything. Maybe the saucer it was spinning inside was only about 3 foot wide. But the UFO had to have a diameter of about the length of a Ford pickup truck. I was in absolute awe. I felt like I won something, like, yes, proof, and I know something my parents don't know. My brother had been calling to us, but I hadn't been paying attention. But I just told him to come and look. He was always shy and a crybaby, but he came reluctantly. I was just observing it spinning and thinking, is something observing me back? I noticed in the sky there was like a tunnel of like spinning energy or clouds or air. That tunnel went straight up into the sky and far away, and the UFO, or its copy, was on the other side, way off in the distance. My cousin wanted to throw a rock at it and tell them to get out. My little brother screamed his panic scream and told him no, and I also told him not to do that. He listened to us, but I guess they felt his hostility, and the UFO moved back and higher. My cousin said, "See, they're scared. Let's make them go," and he started screaming and saying, "Go away, get out," and my brother and I joined in. I can't remember if we started throwing rocks or not, but I don't think we did, but that part does get murky. The tunnel looked like it got bigger in size, and the UFO started looking like it was appearing in the tunnel, even though it was right in front of us still, like a delay, and we could see like snapshots of the UFO in the tunnel going up and up, somewhat like a loading bar where it's a copy, or was, and there was a loud sound and a whoosh. My little brother screamed and bolted home. The UFO was no longer in front of us, but the tunnel was still there, and we could see like a bright light and the UFO at the end of the tunnel, and then it was gone. We ran home to tell my mom. When we got there, my mom was pissed and thought my cousin and I had tricked my brother and scared him. She couldn't quite understand through my brother's hysterical crying what he was saying, only heard they made me see the aliens. We saw no aliens, and we explained this to my mom and what we saw, and I said, "Mom, it's real." I was the only girl, and my mom believed me because I wasn't one to lie. I used to keep a diary and I wrote down the experience. I forgot about it somehow, and it had honestly felt like a dream. We had moved to a new house, many strange things there, and I'll write a post on the huge events that caused me to look into my diary. And something absolutely terrifying and awe-inspiring happened that made me check my diary. I had asked my brother if he remembered the UFO, and he said he did. We called my uncle and cousin, and had my cousin retell the story, and all our stories matched. This is a real story, and I can actually give an exact location of where this occurred. So this happened back in 2010. I was 10 at the time. During this time, it was a snow blizzard. It hit our city out of nowhere, as our weather is known to be bipolar and have late winters. I lived with my cousins at the time. This snow blizzard went on for a while. Thick snow, freezing. This blizzard was so unexpected that no one was prepared for it. Power went out, people buying out water supplies in the stores. I remember seeing on the news that people were using barbecue grills inside their homes for warmth. This mainly occurred in the less fortunate areas. Even though we lived in apartments, we were fortunate enough to have our power on and other needed stuff. To sum up how this blizzard was affecting us, it was cold to the point that trees were falling. I lived on a giant pond, where if you go on our balcony, it would be water. Well, that was frozen. So me being the 10-year-old I was, who doesn't want to play in the snow? Me and my cousin, who was 18 at the time, played out in the snow in the daytime. We practically did that every day whenever we got bored. But one day, him and I went outside in the parking lot outside my apartment, basically in front of our home. The only difference this time was we went to go play in the snow at 6 p.m. and it had already been dark by this time because of daylight savings. We waited until it stopped snowing to go out. So we're playing like normal, building a snowman and walls, anything normal you do in the snow. We decided to attempt to make a snow wall, so we needed lots of snow for that. Now, it had been snowing heavy, and where's the best spot to get a load of snow? Off of the cars that haven't moved, of course. We start building this wall, and I'm taking snow off of trunks of cars. As there's thick layers, it's the easiest spot to obtain a chunk of snow. After a few back and forward of getting snow off cars and bringing it to the wall we were building, I noticed that I hadn't touched my sister's boyfriend's car. And wow, that was a lot of snow since they hadn't left in a few days. I told my cousin to go get that snow. We were walking toward my sister's boyfriend's car, and we were then at it. We arrived at the trunk, and as soon as I grab a big 2-arm full of snow, a very loud click is heard. In confusion, I look around, and then look down, and then around the car, my cousin and I, is a green light in the shape of a circle around us. Now this is freaky enough in that moment. I decided to look up to see what the source of this light was, and what do you know, nothing was above us. So after noticing this light and nothing above us, I look at my cousin and we start running home. I'm freaked out running, looking around everywhere as I run home, checking my surroundings. I see a tree fall in the distance. Yeah, it was cold like I mentioned earlier. This was common during that little blizzard. But for this to happen at that moment of this weird phenomenon adds just more chills to the story for me. My cousin and I get inside, and inside was my sister and his sister cooking. We rush in, freaked out, and they're questioning what's going on with us. We explain the chain of events that went down, and what do you know? Just like anyone who hears these types of stories, they said we were stupid and crazy and we needed to stop playing. Okay, they didn't believe us. Brush it off. Who would expect anyone to? Now, for the rest of that night, my cousin and I just kept peeking out the window very often. Our minds could not be clear of that. We stayed up all night, shook, kept peeking out the window. We played Black Ops all night until about 7 a.m., still peeking out the window every 5 minutes or so. This was not something we were just going to forget, let alone make up. To this day, he still remembers this moment, a moment that should have been pure normal fun, into a creepy extraterrestrial sighting, which I believe. I'm now 18, but the details are still clear to me to this day, as I have thought about it often ever since that moment. It's not something you just forget. My cousin and I talk about this here and there when we see each other, but man oh man, what a freaky incident. I don't really expect you to believe me, but I've had this on my mind for way too long. It's just something too unreal to keep to myself. I've come here to share my experience. I'm looking for thoughts on this. What are your thoughts? What could it have been? Why did it target us? Why didn't it do anything to us? To this day, I have one too many unanswered questions, and they will never be answered, and I'm just going to have to live with that. This happened 5 years ago. I was hanging out with 3 of my friends at this place up on a hill overlooking the ocean. It was a few minutes before sunset, and the sky looked so beautiful. When out of nowhere, I noticed a small ball of light floating over the ocean, far away below. It was floating closer to the surface, just moving in a straight line, and at first we thought it was probably a small fishing boat, because it was too far to see it clearly. We could not really tell how fast it was going either. And then suddenly, it started to move upwards and it did not stop. It just kept going up and up until the sky grew darker and it became too small for us to see. Up to today, we still can't figure out what it really was. We did not initially think it was extraterrestrial in nature because it had never occurred to us something like that would ever happen where we live. But as the years passed and we still had not figured out what it was, I started to wonder if it had actually been an extraterrestrial object, and we had been too stunned and confused to take our phones out and record it. I was about 8, and at the time I was living at my grandmother's house in the suburbs of Chicago. Every now and then, my cousin would come over to visit. This one night he was sleeping over, and we stayed up late talking. It was about 3 a.m. when something extremely bright suddenly covered the whole entire window on the right of us. We both went into pure silence, quickly threw ourselves under the blanket, and hugged each other for what felt like ages. The light was still so bright, even under the covers. We made a plan that we would run on the count of 10 to my grandparents' room. After this part seems a blur to me, but I remember ending up downstairs in a panic, for whatever reason. My grandparents and mom rushed downstairs and just ended up getting pissed at us because we were up so late that we had woke them up. We tried to tell them, but they wouldn't listen. And the story isn't that big, but it's still out of the norm, and I'm still curious as to what happened that night. It happened on the 9th of July in 2011 in Slovakia. I'm Czech and I have relatives there. In a village near the Low Tatras, the observation started around 10 p.m. I was outside the house alone, although we had a family gathering that day, but those who didn't drive away already went to a village pub. The sky was without any clouds that night, and I saw the moon. The garden of that house is so huge that the part of it is also serving as a small field. I was standing at the corner of the garden, near the road, enjoying the fresh night air, and had a good view of the sky beyond the house. Suddenly, I noticed small, red, regularly flashing lights coming from that direction. First I thought it was some kind of airplane, but as the lights were getting closer quite slowly, I realized I could see the shape of the object. It was a triangle. When the triangle got even closer, I saw there was another light on the bottom side, and I also noticed that it was flying very low, not too high above the rooftops, and was quite large. Despite the low altitude and abnormal size, I heard silence. The movement of the object was still very slow. I was curious, and waited until the triangle reached the sky above the house and garden. Then I finally saw that it was so large, it hid the sky view from me. I had a perfect view of the bottom side. There were 3 big blue round lights at the angles of the triangle. Each blue light was surrounded by a circle of small white lights. The blue lights were also connected by 3 lines of medium-sized lights, smaller than the blue but bigger than the white, which were changing color from white to red and back. The lights illuminated the triangle good enough for me to notice it was from black metallic-like material with blue-green reflections. My curiosity turned to fear when the triangle stopped flying further and remained hovering above the garden, but lower than before. I went close to the house to hide under the roof because I thought it maybe wanted to land in the garden. It went down again, this time even more than when it stopped, and at that moment, I knew the triangle was too big to land in the garden. I was relieved a little bit. The triangle stayed hovering about 10 minutes. I also had a weird feeling like if something was telling me to go right under the triangle, but I didn't do it. But it could have just been a feeling. Then the triangle started moving again and slowly flew away. Note 1, I couldn't take photos or record it because my mom had borrowed my camera to take pictures of family gatherings and had completely discharged both of my camera's batteries. The gathering started before noon and she was taking photos the whole time. Note 2, the day after the sighting, I and my parents were returning from the mushroom picking and we saw lots of people on 2 fields before the village. My dad stopped the car because he wanted to know what had happened. I got out from the car too, and I noticed stripes of burned earth randomly placed over 2 fields. One was potato and the second was grain. There were also fruit trees broken in half on the edge of 2 of the fields. I can't prove it was connected to my observation, but it certainly was interesting. There you go, my dear listeners. That was 5 UFO encounters from Reddit. I hope you all enjoyed these stories, and I hope they had some entertainment value for you, and I hope they were somewhat educational. UFO stories are a bit elusive whenever it comes to reporting stories like this. They're kind of hard to find. So I did my best to find, 5 stories that were good, had good descriptions, or at least had a good situation, or a good description of the situation. And I think these were pretty good, so I hope you enjoyed them. If you did like the video, please give it a thumbs up, and go ahead and hit that subscribe button as well, because that helps me feel really good. You can also leave me a comment if you feel so inclined to do so. Down in the description, you'll find links for all of these stories. I source every story down there, as well as links to my Twitter, Facebook, and my subreddit, as well as a webpage where you can submit your story to me if you have a story you want me to read for my channel. All that said, I hope you have a fantastic day and a fantastic rest of your week. I will see you on the next video, but until then, my friends, sleep well.